Okay, so one of the first things that we would be looking at with estrogen dominance is cleaning up the toxins. If we go back a slide, removing the triggers, we're going to be looking at food intolerances, and we're going to be looking at the toxic environment and the chemicals. Cleaning up those xenoestrogens.
So, do you
Go.
want to start? So, this is something I've been ranting about for literally decades. There is a brilliant book called Not Just a Pretty Face by a woman called Stacey Malkan, Malkan. It's a very thin book, but it packs a punch. And it basically talks about how I think it's really easy to just discount a lipstick or something as just, well, it's just a lipstick. Actually, we get such a buildup of xenoestrogens. The technical term for xenoestrogens is endocrine disruptor chemicals. If our triangle is our endocrine system, we don't want that disrupted. You know, people are paying good money with us as coaches to not have their endocrine disrupted. So we need to advise them on all areas. And Stacey Malkan actually shows very clearly how in a day, a woman particularly can be exposed to over 500 chemicals that are endocrine disruptors. And there are children born with quite substantial birth defects, and we're talking about deformed genitalia. There's very specific things that start to show with endocrine disruptor chemicals. It is an astonishing read, and absolutely cemented for me that toxic chemicals are not the way to go. So the chemicals that are in sunscreen lotions, and I just want to point out that since the Slip Slap Slop campaign, I wrote a blog about this years ago, since the Slip Slap Slop campaign in Australia, because of the whole hoo-ha with their ozone layer in the 80s and 90s, the Slip Slap Slop campaign, there is still an increase in skin cancer. So Dr. Paul Saladino does a huge amount of work on trying to move people away from sun creams, because the sun creams themselves are actually carcinogenic, and create an environment in the body where xenoestrogenic. So this is really bad for us. And we are animals that are supposed to know how to interact with the sun. And so it is not about slapping on your SPF. And so anytime I meet an esthetician or a facialist who says, do you wear sunscreen? I'm like, no, I do not, because we are not meant to have, we're meant to be in the sun, and we were not designed to wear sun cream. Just get out of the sun and get in the shade as and when you need to. But actually, you know, we are now seeing childhood rickets again because of sun cream. This is a massive soapbox rant for me. Childhood rickets because of sun cream, because children are now vitamin D deficient because they're using sunscreen. So it's a really big issue, and obviously xenoestrogenic. So again, in the training, we talk about the main toxic chemicals. We talk about the big six. There's loads, but the big six. So parabens are a preservative. They're not just in skincare and things. They're also in outgassing of furniture, of carpets, of that new car smell. That's parabens. And anything else? Oh, and so you talk about benzophenone there as well. Yeah, there's whole resources in the diploma about this, and also we have written multitudes of blogs in various places.
I just want to add to the sunscreen piece.
Rant.
Actually, yes, is for people who say, but I burn even if I'm like 2 minutes in the sun. There's a really interesting correlation between the fats that we eat, the quality fats that we eat, with the right levels of omega-3 that produce our fat cells that respond to the sun. So when we have high levels of inflammatory omega-6, then there is a bigger connection with burning. So if you've got a client who is talking about, well, I can't even go out in the sun without my sun cream, we need to be looking at fats as well.
We do. And actually, it was really interesting a few years ago because a friend of ours actually had done some research into sunscreens and was going somewhere really hot. And there was some research around astaxanthins, which is one of the chemicals in an antioxidant. You can buy astaxanthins. And I think it was blackcurrant oil, but don't quote me on it. So you could actually use blackcurrant oil, which is not like putting coconut oil on yourself where you want to burn, because between the two of them, they actually created an SPF, and it was really fascinating. She was like, I could like I could feel it was exactly the same as wearing sun cream. But I don't necessarily believe it's the blackcurrant oil, because again, we just didn't know how to process blackcurrants into blackcurrant oil when we were animals, not in houses. So I don't see that. And then with the astaxanthins, I'm like, well, that's down to diet. So absolutely, the fats, eating the right foods, creating the right environment, and just being someone who has to be more in the shade. Like that's kind of how it needs to be. The sun creams are very not in line with our evolutionary processes.
Oh, and stop wearing sunglasses, because your eyes communicate with your skin to say, okay, well, we need to protect ourselves. But if you've got sunglasses on, that message doesn't come through. So then you burn.
Yeah. So choose when you want to look cool really sparingly.
Exactly. In the shade.
So as we mentioned earlier, xenoestrogens in industrial products and plastics, so BPA, bisphenol A, phthalates. Oh, phthalates are plasticizers. They're not just in industrial plastics and products. That's what keeps your nail varnish on, and it's technically what a hairspray is. Anything that creates some kind of plasticky residue or has some kind of hardness to it is got phthalates in it. Plasticizer for PVC. I mean, basically, we've absolutely just messed with everything. And as soon as, if you haven't watched Dark Waters, that's what it's called, isn't it? Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo. Watch it and then have a bit of a cry, and then don't let anyone near you with WD-40 or GT85 or any of those other sort of, lubricants, because it's absolutely terrifying. They call them the forever chemicals, and they absolutely mess with our endocrines. They are completely the industrial products that we're talking about here. And they are now in every single animal and in every single waterway. Every species of animal on the planet now has traces of these forever chemicals in them. It's absolutely shocking.
So one of the things that you can recommend to your clients is going for the more glass Tupperware options,
Yeah.
moving away from the plastics, moving away from the non-stick pans, and
Go back to enameled cast iron.
mm-hmm.
So as we were mentioning, xenoestrogen in foods and insecticides. So these are some of the things that you find in food, which are really great. And so this always just for me comes back to, if it feels like you're in a chemistry test when you're reading the back of a packet, don't buy that food. It's not food. It is processed. And then insecticides, it's so upsetting. And again, another really good book that I actually just bought for a friend because it changed my life when I read it about 15 years ago. It's called Silent Spring by a woman called Rachel Carson. And I sobbed. There's another book where I sobbed. And it was written in the 50s, and that book sparked the onset of the organic soil movement, because the Silent Spring refers to the fact that when they started using DDT, which is banned because of that book, all the birds were dying and there was no insects. So it was silent. The spring was silent, which is so heartbreaking. But still, we are now using pesticides and particularly in the UK, we are using pesticides that are banned in a multitude of other countries, and we're starting to see the same issue with our bees dying, and of course we need the bees.
Last one on the xenoestrogens.
So again, these are, anytime you see any of these words on anything, these are additional xenoestrogens. So you'll notice there, one of the combined oral contraceptive pills, not great. In fact, there was an article. I'm based down in the south of England, so Portsmouth, in Hampshire, and there was literally an article, and I live right on the beach. And it was actually saying that in Portsmouth Harbour, there are record numbers in the water. They basically found huge amounts of MDMA and cocaine, which I was like, that pretty much sums up Portsmouth, and also record amounts of the contraceptive pill residue in the water. Absolutely shocking. That's in the harbour. That's not even, stuff that's coming out the tap. That's just like naturally in the harbour. Yeah, really upsetting.